Welcome back to another episode of All Out Sports. This is a new series me and Max are going to do called the X's and O's. We're just going to kind of break down some games that we felt should be talked about throughout the week. So, Max, we'll start with the first game, the Ravens and Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you can go. I'm going to go switch to the screen so I can go up and down on the stats.
You're good. Yeah, no, I think the biggest takeaway from this is like, and I remember in our preview video for the week, we half of us were favoring the Bucks, the other half the Ravens. I was on the camp of the Bucks, thinking, it's a home game, prime time TV. Ravens have looked like they are the type of team that could beat anybody, lose to anybody. So I figured Tampa Bay would play it close and end up winning the game. Of course, they didn't, and their offense didn't really look that much better. Tom Brady, his statistically looks a lot better, or looked a lot better because he was getting the ball out much quicker. I don't know if you remember, throughout the game, they were really focusing on a lot of short yardage, get the ball out quick, just before the linebackers or the corners or the secondaries in general could do anything. And he has dynamic playmakers out wide that can make plays on their feet. So I thought that was a pretty strong strategy for Tampa Bay. Unfortunately, it just wasn't sustainable. It didn't lead to too many first downs. And over time, Lamar Jackson just really showed up. And honestly, the Baltimore Ravens, and I know we're going to touch on the injuries, they looked really damn good this game. And they look like a very real team that's going to compete for a deep playoff push this year. So I'm just curious to hear what you have to say about it.
So, the Buccaneers have struggled all year. And like you said from the preview, we kind of talked about it. And I think I said for them, and I don't remember what other team I brought it up for, but I feel like they're a team that can kind of make a splash out of nowhere. And everybody was kind of thinking, oh, this will be the game they do it. Once again, they let everybody down. The yards are there, the points aren't. The touchdowns did not come with the yards. You look at Baltimore side, honestly, the first drive, I think it was the first two drives, Lamar was passing, no issue. He was ready to, he didn't hand the ball off. It was just straight throws. And who were those throws to? Mark Andrews. And I think if Mark Andrews doesn't get hurt, because he had a drop on third down, or was it second or third down, and he had a drop in the end zone. I mean, they were well defended, but those are touchdowns you normally see him catch. If Mark Andrews plays this whole game, it might be a complete blowout. I'm going to be honest, because the
Yeah.
start of the game they were throwing the ball all kinds of crazy on them, and from Tampa's side, you know, Tom Brady had some good throws. He had that throw on the sideline to I think it was Julio in like
Yeah.
double coverage.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of made a push late in the game, but Baltimore, ended up keeping them out. And it's just for this game, like I said before, I don't want to talk too much on this game. Baltimore, I feel like should have won by more because I felt like they definitely outplayed Tampa, but the score is just a lot closer
But could
than.
that come down to the fact that they lost a ton of playmakers on offense? I mean, to your point, right? If Mark Andrews were to play, he was getting the ball that first drive. He also had a touchdown that was deflected off of him by one of the
Mhm.
corners for Tampa. So, point being, like, if he plays the entire game, if Rashad Bateman plays the entire game, if Gus Edwards plays the entire game, or for sake of argument, one of them stays in, and the others don't, right? Um, does that improve Baltimore's offensive output? I think it absolutely does. Those are three of their most dynamic offensive players. Um,
Now that you say that, Tampa's lucky the game was this close. Like, really lucky because Baltimore ran all over them, no problem. And you think if they have their best playmakers, they're rolling through and passing because they pass the ball well too.
right.
Very,
I mean, the
very.
thing is, their defense did a good job of keeping it close. I think that's a credit to Tampa's defense, but also, we spoke about it at length after the game as well. Um, I mean, even when Gus Edwards was in, the run was shut down by Tampa, really. So when you're forcing Lamar to throw the football, he's not. I mean, it's not to say he's a bad thrower of the football, but he certainly prefers making plays on his feet and prefers handing the ball off. So that already limits a huge facet of Baltimore's offense. And so I think the Tampa Bay defensive scheme was really successful against the run, but then when you take Gus Edwards out of the game, they really don't have a good run game. So
If if you're looking at it, if you can see the stats, the rushing game for Baltimore, it like okay, so you see the averages, like he averaged 8.9
Yeah,
to carry.
yeah.
His longest run was 40 yards. So after that, he only got 20 yards on the rest of his carries.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good
that's the
point.
thing. Like, you can't be skewed by the fact that they ran 231 yards because, like you said, look at Kenyon Drake. He broke out for 40 yards in one play. Uh, Gus Edwards broke out for 22 in another, right? And so like in reality, yes, it wasn't. I don't know if I said they got shut down. That's not what I meant. It was more like they limited the effect of the run game to a point where that wasn't what was killing them. Because if you
Mhm.
look back to last week, Baltimore was running all over people.
Yep.
And I think Tampa Bay made it a point of contention to stop the run. But again, I think to flip that same script, um, a big factor of what Baltimore did to beat Tampa on the defensive side was limit their run. I mean, you have to look no further than the stats. I understand Leonard Fournette only touched the ball 9 times. Um, that's still, I mean, 9 yards for 24. Sorry, 9 carries for 24 yards. That's not very efficient, and uh,
Yeah.
and that's something that's been killing the Bucks all year is the run game. But Baltimore, their their D line's looking really good this year. Their run defense in particular is looking really good this year.
Especially after they just added Roquan Smith.
Oh, now exactly. Now this was before Roquan. Now they add
Yeah.
Roquan, and it's just going to get better.
So to wrap this game up, if you're going to do power rankings for these teams, does Baltimore go up, and how far does Tampa go down if Tampa drops?
I mean, I had Baltimore in that fringe top 5 already, so I think this
Mhm.
just solidifies it. Tampa, for me, they dropped pretty significantly because, like I said, I went into this game thinking that Tampa would find a way to secure top place in their division, but now they're a game off of Atlanta, who has the lead in the division, and therefore they just fall off dramatically in my rankings as a result.
Does do you think Tampa hits the, because we're doing Alex's power rankings tonight? Do you think Tampa's below 15, like 15, 16, 17?
You have to put them below 15. I mean, the fact that they're 3-5 can't be. I mean, I understand the Ravens are a good team, but think about some of their other losses: losing to Trubisky, losing
Yeah,
to.
it's getting to that point of we did this when the season first started for a couple teams. It's getting to that point of overreact. Like, is it an overreaction now,
Right,
or do
exactly.
you really have to like look at them and be like, listen, Tom Brady's putting up 325 but one touchdown and you're losing games.
Right.
So, but that's all for that game. We're gonna move on to the next one. Did the screen switch? I can't
Yes.
really tell. Okay,
Yes.
moving on to the next game, which is the Steelers at the Eagles. So last game we kind of talked about more of just the numbers. I kind of want to break down the positional positional matchups, you could say. You're
Yeah.
going against Philly in Philly. That's already tough to play.
Right.
And I said this to you over the phone. I said this to Michael today, and I'm going to say it on recording so it's there for everybody. When before this game started, when I came into this game watching it, I'm thinking Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones have very similar stat lines. I know Jalen Hurts is better. I'm not saying he's not. But I was waiting for Jalen Hurts to kind of show me, you have AJ Brown, you had Devontae Smith. Show me this year what you can do with those guys. And he showed it this game. 4 passing touchdowns with 285 yards. AJ Brown, 6 receptions, 156 yards, and 3 touchdowns against this Steelers team. How do you feel about that, Max?
I mean, it's a hell of a performance. I mean, and yes, I know the Steelers are not a very good football team, but their defense is still incredibly good and incredibly talented. And for him to put up that stat line, and honestly, my player of the game has to be AJ Brown. For AJ Brown to shred any person that was on him the way he did, um, I mean, that was just impressive in its own right. But we spoke about this specifically going back to Jalen Hurts. Some of those throws he made to AJ Brown in particular in the end zone were impressive. Because going into the NFL, this, Frank, I wasn't the biggest fan of Jalen Hurts as an NFL quarterback. I thought the guy was incredibly athletic. I think he had the leadership qualities to be a successful quarterback, but I didn't think he had the throwing ability that would take him very far. And I think he proved yesterday. He's been proving it all year, to be fair, but yesterday in particular, Sunday in particular, that some of these throws that he was making. I mean, these are incredible A+ throws. I mean, I'm thinking specifically the second touchdown to AJ Brown off to the right side of the end zone. where he just threw it in a basket. I mean, A.J. Brown, don't get me wrong, had his corner beat, but the way that that ball went into his hands in a position where even if the corner was on him, there's no way physically the corner would have been able to make a play on it. That's just indicative of how good of a thrower Jalen Hurts has become of the football. And so that was the most impressive part for me, was just seeing, yeah, it's an inflated stat line, quote unquote, because he has great skill position players around him and great protection. But some of those throws, I mean, you could give him all the protection in the world. You can give him all the best skill position players in the world. Great quarterbacks make that throw. Mediocre quarterbacks don't make those throws. And so I would say that game is the one that proved to me that Jalen Hurts is for real. Jalen Hurts is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now.
I'm not going to argue that. He's balling. And because I said we were talking about matchups, let's go to the flip side.
Right.
You know, this is now Chase Claypool gone, but this was Chase Claypool's last game. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. I don't know if this is an issue with Kenny Pickett, if this is an issue with coaching, but Slay, Bradbury, those guys held their own, locked them up, did what they got to do. This Eagles secondary is not like I know Bradbury in New York kind of fell off in his second year, and then the Giants get rid of him, goes to Philly. And I don't know if people kind of forgot about how good Bradbury was, but now that he's a number 2, he doesn't have to have the pressure of guarding the 1. He can guard the 2 and all this and that. And he's still a solid cornerback. And you pair him up with Darius Slay with a defense that's very talented and has really good depth. I just don't understand what's going on in Pittsburgh, because there was the play I showed you. I think I sent it to you of Najee Harris juking back and forth, not picking up the first down. I know you're very high on Kenny Pickett for the future, possibly. I just don't really understand what's going through. They're 2-6 right now. Pittsburgh got it with that win against Tampa.
Right.
But, it's kind of back to reality for them.
Well, listen, I mean, my opinion on the Steelers doesn't change like it did. It's been the same opinion I've had since week 1. They're a terrible football team, and they're going to get a top 5, if not higher, pick in the draft. But it's not because Kenny Pickett can't do it. Listen, he's going to have growing pains. It's very rare that you see there's freak exceptions like Justin Herbert, but it's very rare that you see, a first-year guy come in and just, take the league by storm, especially on a team that has, in my opinion, horrendous protection. Honestly, the running game hasn't been great as a result. So, the biggest thing that helps a rookie quarterback out is when he can at least establish the run so that there's not as much pressure in the passing game. And then obviously that means defenses won't be scheming for the pass entirely. But he doesn't have that luxury. So I definitely don't think it's coaching, because Tomlin is a heck of a coach. And he's proven that, this is going to be his first year sub 500. And, he's never been sub 500 in his entire career. Think about that. And he's been coaching, like 15 years?
Now, I talked about this. I did a live stream earlier with the trade deadline. And I brought up how I'm not saying Tomlin's a bad coach, because I believe in Mike Tomlin. Yeah. But I've seen people on the internet, obviously it's Twitter and all that stuff, but people are starting to question, was Tomlin a product of the team?
No.
And I don't think that. But like you were saying, you're in a position now. I still think you have weapons. You just kind of got to figure it out. You know what I mean? Chemistry.
I think it all starts from establishing a run game. And because their offensive line is so bad, they just haven't been able to establish a run game. And because, like you said, it's not a question of lack of weapons. When you got, they just traded Chase Claypool, but Deontay Johnson's a great player. I think George Pickens has the potential of being a really good receiver. Freiermuth has proven to be a pretty decent tight end in the passing game in particular. So it's not for lack of skill position players more than it is a lack of establishing the run. And I think that really starts with beefing up the offensive line and giving Najee Harris a chance to affect the game and not average what he's been averaging, like sub 4 yards per carry or something like that. That's not acceptable for a starting running back in the NFL, especially for a guy like Najee Harris.
I know we were talking about it with the the last game. You can look at the numbers, 4 yards a carry. Well, look, he had 8 carries, 32 yards, an 18-yard run. That's very bad after that 18-yard run. Yeah. So I mean, I talked about it on the live stream too because we looked over draft position. I think they're gonna go for O line in the offseason and the draft and all that, and try to build a team to help around Najee and Pickett because Pickett I think is just in a rough situation right now.
I agree.
You know, first year, just kind of get thrown in there. You got weapons, but it's kind of learning your team. So to end this one off, I know we said on the phone yesterday, so let's hear you say it. Is Philly top 2 now?
Yes,
For
yes.
Philly's top 2.
Listen, you can attest to this because you've seen where I've given you my hypothetical on where I would put them in power rankings. I've been high on Philly all year. I've had them at 2 for weeks, and I think this just solidifies that they are the second best team in the NFL, potentially even the best team in the NFL. But I would still take Buffalo to beat them in a neutral field. But I just think Philadelphia, people want to discredit them because of their schedule. You can only play the teams that you play. You can only play the people in front of you, and they're doing a great job of winning games. So the best job in the entire league. So you can't hold anything against them.
I was one of those people. If you remember, I had them at 4 or 5, and I said it was because their schedule's weak and they haven't played anybody. And I mean, they showed up against Dallas. Jalen Hurts, I had a question. I know it's wrong for me to question Jalen Hurts because I know he's good, but it was more of that. Can you do it? He did it yesterday or however many days ago where he threw 4 touchdowns, 285 yards. Said, okay. And he took him out with 9 minutes to go. Like there was still tons of game time left.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how I feel about
think about it. Look, he has 200, almost 300 yards on 4 touchdowns and almost perfect passer rating. I mean, against a defense that's one of the better defenses in the league.
And it was more of like, you know how much we both think this guy is amazing is Minka's been getting picked on a lot as of recent.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's something going because the first 3 weeks Minka was stellar.
Well, what's the difference between the first 3 weeks and now?
The injury.
Injuries to their defense entirely. I think TJ Watt not being there makes a huge difference.
Yep. But yeah, even in didn't you guys play him and Minka was on the field, right?
Oh yeah.
So I don't want to spend too much time talking about just one guy, but like something is wrong with Minka. Something is not going on right with him. I don't know if it's the whole defense or it's just him, but ever since his injury, he just hasn't looked the same. It's very, very rough. Let me see if it says anything. Yeah, I can't look at coverage stats on here. You ready for the next game?
Let's do it.
Something has got to give with the Los Angeles Rams. They are 3-4 on the season. Matthew Stafford, although he didn't have a turnover in this game, has been one of the turnover-heavy quarterbacks this season.
Yep.
What's going on with them? What do you think the issue is outside of the main one, which we all know is the offensive line?
Yeah.
And a lot of people say Andrew Whitworth. Well, I beg to differ. I think Andrew Whitworth, being a 40-year-old lineman, you almost, yes, obviously he had the fundamentals, but just like Brady, age is catching up. 40-year-old lineman, you can probably find something just as good that's younger, and it just seems like
I disagree with that. That was actually my first point. I think I agree the age, obviously Father Time's undefeated, but look at even their Super Bowl run last year. I mean, Whitworth was the most important part of that offensive line. And because, he's protecting Matthew Stafford's blind side. He's giving him the opportunity to, have more time in the pocket to make a clean pass or make a smart decision. And I think him not being there and replacing him with some young guys, it's right now not really doing them any favors. And you're also seeing that reflected in the run game. I mean, Darrell Henderson. So, okay, people point to the fact that Cam Akers isn't playing. Cam Akers didn't play all of last year, right? Except to the playoffs. And their run game was still very efficient with Darrell Henderson being the lead back. And I understand, he only carried the ball 4 times. He was dealing with an illness. So I think it might be injury related to this game in particular. But just generally speaking, the run game has been a non-factor. And again, I feel like I'm harping on the same point, but I think we have to acknowledge that you can't have a successful offense without having at least a somewhat successful run game. Buffalo being an exception, but even Buffalo's run game has improved as of late. So I think that's probably, I would say offensive line and run game are tied for me, and they also it's one is lacking because of the other. Like they both, if one is better, it's because the other one's doing well. And I think you need to establish some protection for Matthew Stafford, especially because he's a gunslinger, and he did so well last year because he was able to, like I said, have a clean pocket and make those decisions and have times to pass it to those receivers, but he doesn't have that anymore. So I think, that those are the 2 points of contention for me for the Rams.
I'm going to bring up a point, and this is the X's and O's show. So we talk about everything. So let's actually go into the X's and O's.
All right.
Does Sean McVay have any part of them losing? Do you think any of it is for him to blame? Because I'm going to be honest, when I watch them, it just seems like it's Cooper Kupp or bust.
I mean, just chuck the ball down to Cooper Kupp on a fly route, right? Like it's not.
I feel like we all know Sean McVay is good. We all know that. But something about this year with every NFL team is weird. And I feel like Sean McVay, I don't want to be like point the finger at him, but it took them 6-7 weeks to get Allen Robinson involved. Tyler Higbee became a decent part of the offense, and he's like in and out. It's whatever. They have no run game off part of the offensive line being bad. And it's like, when do you stop pointing it at the players and pointing it at Sean McVay and think, maybe he's part of the issue?
I mean, again, what are you going to do? You're going to fire him? Like he just won like he's a top 5 coach in the NFL already, resume wise. And so like, I agree. He could be. I think he's still the biggest thing I have against McVay is that I think he's still convinced this Rams team's the same Rams team from last year, when they're just not. Right. I mean, there's tons of regression all over the field, both sides of the football. I would even argue because even Jalen Ramsey hasn't looked great this year.
Yeah. Well, he's been better since the first few weeks.
He's been better, but I'm saying generally speaking, throughout the year, he hasn't been that great. And so you're seeing regression. Could be just a case of the Super Bowl hangover. That happens to most successful teams. But, I mean, look, he just can't be coaching this team the same way he coached him last year. It's simple as that, and so you can't be gutsy. You can't be nearly
as about it. To your point, it's hard to say because you look at last year and it's not much different. Okay, last year you have Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr.
Right.
But then you still don't really have a great run game.
A much better run game than they do now.
Yeah, this year you have Allen Robinson, who I know he's not Odell Beckham. I know he's not much of a Van Jefferson.
He's not a slouch. He's good.
But he's still good, though.
Yeah.
So it's like your weapons are still kind of there. You still have Cooper Kupp. Does losing one offensive lineman make that much of a difference?
No, but also think about this, right? They just got Van Jefferson back. Think about how critical of a player Van Jefferson was for them, especially down the stretch last year. So they have Cooper Kupp, right? They're replacing OBJ with Allen Robinson. But even before OBJ, they had Robert Woods before he tore his ACL. And Robert Woods, we know, had a lot of success on the Rams. So I would argue that Allen Robinson is not better than Robert Woods, or wasn't better than Robert Woods was on the Rams, nor is he better than OBJ. He is good, though. But then you don't have that extra slot option like Van Jefferson. Now you do. He's coming back from injury. And Ben, I forgot I'm going to butcher his last name, but the rookie or whatever, he's not a Van Jefferson type player. And so I do think they've lost some weapons. Now, obviously, they're gradually getting them back because Van Jefferson's back in the fold, but now Cooper Kupp's hurt, right? So it's like, where's that consistency with the skill position players out wide? And then, like I said, again, going back on the prior point, like when you lose a guy like Whitworth, it's not just the effect on the field. It's the leadership that's not there anymore. Because he was an older guy. He was a guy. He was
a Walter Payton Man of the Year too, like
exactly.
Like that.
It's a high character guy that rallied behind the troops and got the young guys to buy in. So, you're losing a big figure there that will inevitably take them years to replace. But again, I just don't think they're the same team they were last year. I mean, even defensively,
Before we talk about the Niners, I want to say this really quick. Go back to last year. Go back to the last game, the Super Bowl. The Rams looked terrible in that game. They couldn't run the ball. And if you watch the mic'd up, McVay's like, we're going to stop running it. He's like, we can't do it. We cannot run the ball. It came down to the last drive for them to win the game. Do you think that game was kind of a reality of what their team really is now?
No, I don't think you can read into it too much. I think it's more like they just played the hottest team in football. I mean, they
Mhm.
played a team that, we've spoken in the past about, credit to them for making it there, but on paper they're not the most talented team in the world. But at the time they were the most difficult team to beat in the league because they were just beating everyone in the most competitive in the most competitive conference in the entire league. So I think it's more of a plus in the side of the Bengals because the Bengals were just playing, their best football
Mhm.
of the entire year. And the Rams were just, another one of those opponents that were struggling to play them. So I think it's more indicative of that than anything that could have gone on this year. Because again, it's there's a lot of change of personnel. There's a lot of change of personnel, and that affects football teams. I don't care how good or bad you are, you know.
Mhm.
So
So to the flip side now, the 49ers, who have now taken the Ram spot in the wild card, I believe. Or are they?
we
I
might
think
be
the
leading the division. No, it's Seattle's
no,
leading
it's
the division.
Seattle's leading the division. I think they're the 7th seed now.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
So San Francisco, start of the year, we weren't too hot about them with Trey Lance and all that. Trey Lance gets hurt. Garoppolo comes in, does game manager football. They start winning games. How do you feel about this team now with Christian McCaffrey? He came in, threw a touchdown, caught a touchdown, rushed a touchdown.
Let me tell you something, dude. They might be the best or second best team in the NFC. This team has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations
Do you
and
think
could
their
very well win.
record their record is just kind of bullshit, like throw it out the window?
I
They're not.
mean, yeah, I mean, look, a lot has gone on for San Francisco this year. They lose their starting quarterback week 2, right? Because this was supposed to be the Trey Lance year. People forget that.
Yep.
You lose a guy like Trey Lance who's been getting the first team reps all offseason.
You lose Elijah Mitchell early
You lose
on.
Elijah Mitchell, exactly. Trent Williams was out for a couple weeks. Um, you know, there's some freak losses in there, like week 1, Trey Lance's first game in over a year. They're playing in the rain in Chicago, right? And so like literally in the middle of like a hurricane.
Yep.
So they don't. That was a fluke loss. Um, the Atlanta game was kind of just weird.
Yeah, the Atlanta game was odd. Like that's just one of those like upset games. Like
And that happens to every team every year, So like I think the worst is past them. And then now think about it, right? They were still trying to figure out how to use Debo Samuel because especially like you said, when they lost Elijah Mitchell, it's like they want to do what they did last year when Elijah Mitchell was hurt, which was use Debo as that running back option, but it just wasn't working as effectively this year. And so now that they don't have to worry about that because they brought in arguably the best running back in the NFL, I'd say he's probably second behind Derrick Henry. This is a guy that, like we saw, against the Rams, he's not just versatile on the run, not just successful in the run. He's incredibly versatile on all aspects of the football field. And so this is a guy that can catch a ton of passes and be just as good as your top receiver. This is the guy that'll run the ball down your throat. This is a guy that could even throw for a touchdown if you need him to, right? So you're bringing in a dynamic playmaker that this team has not had and adds an entirely new element for any team trying to scheme against them. And the thing is, like, again, the easy argument against the 49ers is, oh, they have Garoppolo, and Garoppolo's not a star quarterback, and he makes silly decisions on occasion. Okay, dude. But here's the thing: when you give him Christian McCaffrey, that offensive line with Trent Williams, and then when Debo comes back from injury, especially now that Kittle's been playing consistently as well, Ayuk's really balling out this year. Ayuk was a non-factor last year. People don't talk
yep.
about him enough. Um, that is a team that you don't need a star quarterback to win with that team. Garoppolo, this is the best team Garoppolo's ever had, and Garoppolo was a quarter away from beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. So Garoppolo just needs to play clean. Last week, he had a great game, to be fair, but he also played incredibly clean. Look, no picks, very efficient, 21 for 25, okay, throwing the football. That's what you need. You just need efficiency because you know that Christian McCaffrey is going to establish the run easily. And you can just check the ball down to him. You can check the ball down to Debo Samuel. You can check the ball down to George Kittle. You don't need to throw the ball, sling it deep. And the thing is, defenses could try to scheme for that all they want, but when you have those type of dynamic skill position players, it's not going to happen. And then let's not to mention the flip side of the field, they have probably arguably the best defense. I would say Buffalo's probably won their top 3 at the very least. Top 3 defenses in the league. I mean,
Yeah,
come
I feel
on.
like people don't. I mean, I know people do talk about them, but as the year goes on and headlines get brought up. Fred Warner is still on this team.
Yeah.
Fred Warner's great. Bosa, of course.
Bosa's disgusting.
It's just
their secondary looks good.
I feel like
year.
I feel like the big names, like, because remember when they had Richard Sherman and stuff like that, and they had the names and they kind of just went away. But this team still plays good football. They're coached well. You know, Kyle Shanahan is amazing, and we talked about this on the phone. This is what started up the whole show thing. I was very torn on McCaffrey going to the Niners because I was like, listen, if he goes there and gets hurt, you kind of just lose out on, you know, a running back, like a star running back. You know, they just traded away Jeff Wilson, so it's a little bit different now.
Right.
But I was like, if you get McCaffrey, he gets hurt, you kind of just back to square one. But McCaffrey, healthy, playing for them, it just looked great every down.
Of course. And he will, because this is the best protection McCaffrey's ever had in his entire career.
He has a team around him that's built for him. He's not in – there's a difference between getting force-fed the ball in Carolina and being in a team that's built for you. This team is built for him. He has a tight end that's another lineman.
Exactly. That here's the thing. If they decide, you know, say he has a bad day in the office, they won't rely on him to win games.
Exactly, yeah.
They could. They absolutely could if they needed to, but they don't necessarily need to, right? I mean, this team to me – That's the game I want to see. I would love to see these guys play Philly late in the playoffs. I think that's honestly, a
game. That's a real test for, I think, a Philly defense. You know, like we talked about earlier.
Oh yeah,
their secondary is good. Okay, now you're going against Kittle, Ayuk, and Samuel. All right, what about watching McCaffrey? And then same on the flip side. What are you guys going to do against Philly's offense? Against Philly's offense, where they run an RPO where it's a read option /screen /slant.
Right.
So it's going to – I want to
So that's the thing. That's a test for the 49ers defense as well. And it's also a test for Jimmy Garoppolo throwing on those corners.
Yeah.
You know, so I think those are the two best teams in the NFC. It's hard for me. I really want to put Tampa there, or I wanted to put Tampa there throughout the year, but then they're just not showing me anything on offense. So I can't.
To wrap this one up, would you put San Francisco over Minnesota, especially now that they just got?
That's Hawkinson. A great question, honestly.
They have Hawkinson now, bro. It's Jefferson, Thielen, Hawkinson, Cook.
So tell me if you understand what I mean by this. So I think Philly has to go one right now, just for right now. I think you have to give Minnesota two right now, but the thing is, if they played each other on like a primetime game, nighttime or playoff setting, I take San Francisco to beat them.
I'm going to be honest. I don't hate that take. The thing with Minnesota is I'm comparing them to San Francisco because think about the star talent on that team. You have both kind of game manager-ish quarterbacks, solid defenses with a star wide receiver, star tight end, star running back. With a good wide receiver too. Those are teams that match up against. That's why they beat the Rams every time they play them. Because
there's a difference between Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback.
Yes.
But Garoppolo wins bigger games than Kirk Cousins does.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if it's a playoff game, I'm going to trust Jimmy G to win that game before I trust Kirk Cousins to win that game.
Think about this last year. I don't want to keep going back in time because we're talking about now.
No, I get it.
The 49ers are a drop pick away from winning the NFC Championship and going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, great point.
I feel like people forget that this Niners team, yes, they're 4-4 and they've looked sloppy in some games and really good in others. They continue to beat the Rams when they play them.
I know.
And you have to
They already swept them this year.
You have to beat your division rivals, to win the division. Okay, obviously Seattle. We'll talk about these two teams though. Like San Francisco against the Rams, it's almost San Francisco every time.
Frank, San Francisco's going to win the division this year. There's no way Seattle's winning.
If Seattle keeps it up and wins, that's
no, they're not going to though. Because as soon as San Francisco plays them, they're going to beat them because they're just too good. The thing is, Seattle, they're riding the wave, and I'm not trying to discredit them because Geno's played out of his mind, and Seattle's offense has looked incredible. But the truth is, San Francisco's just a much better football team. They're much more prepared to make a deep playoff run. I think Seattle's defense will not have an answer for this offense. I just don't see it.
I'm at that point with Geno that I was with Jalen Hurts, where I said, okay, play a good defense and prove it to me now.
Yeah.
You just did this to the Giants, where I'll give him credit. The secondary's kind of banged up, and the D line's banged up, but he threw all over us.
Yeah.
Go play another team and do it though. Go play like a
I think
Dallas.
no, and listen, it's not for me. For me, it's less prove it to me, Gino, more than defense. Prove to me that you can contain the
True.
49ers. That's the thing for me.
True. But we're gonna wrap this one up because we've been talking about the Niners and the Rams for like 15 minutes, something like that.
I know.
Next game. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much on this game because we kind of really know the storylines for these teams. The Bills, they're number one in football, if not they're number two behind the Eagles. Josh Allen looks like an MVP, of course. Even though what's crazy is Josh Allen has turned the ball over a lot, but he still puts up the numbers and wins the games.
Sure.
The run game for them has gotten better. They just acquired Naheem Hines. But the thing I want to talk about is Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
Okay.
We said this on the phone. Aaron Rodgers, look at that run game. 143 yards, 208 total. The run game is good, but they're always in a position where they're losing and they can't run it. And they have to rely on Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. I hate to say, I said this in the live stream earlier. Devontae Adams leaves. Rodgers takes all the money. Brady never was the highest paid player on his team because they went out and got pieces to help him, and then they drafted well and developed those pieces into weapons for him. The Packers can't do that for Rodgers. The last player I can think of that was Randall Cobb.
Sure.
Obviously like Devontae Adams and stuff. But I'm talking about like an under the radar kind of piece.
I get it. No, I get it.
Rodgers has all the money now, all the team's money. You're not going to be a winning football team until, honestly, he retires.
So let me tell you something. Actually,
I'm interested.
I don't disagree with any of your points, but honestly, I think the Packers should take a lot of positives out of this game because let's look at the stats right up there. Buffalo only scored 3 points in the entire second half. And a lot of it is because of their own misdoing. The run game was really successful in the first half.
Allen did throw the 2 picks in the second half, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Because they didn't run the ball in the second half. I don't know if you remember that. They were just running the ball down Green Bay's
One
throat.
of the picks was at the goal line too, so
just a bad throw. That was just a bad throw, but they're forcing the ball. And again, that's what I think might affect Buffalo in the long run is the little arrogance they play with, that they want to just throw the ball 100 times when all they had to do was manage clock and run the ball. And the thing is, normally you could argue, the run game isn't great, so they don't want to run it. But the one game where the run game was proving to be incredibly successful, they stopped running. It's like, why would you do that? But also credit to Green Bay, where I think the major positive on the offensive side, like you said, is they should be a run-first team. Be a Dallas. Yes. That's what Dallas learned that when Dak got hurt. They started running the ball with Zeke and Pollard, and now they only have 2 losses. They've completely shifted. Think about the offense from last year and this year.
Yep.
Last year, they were never running the ball. It was all throw. And to be fair, yeah, I know they had better receivers, but think about Green Bay's situation. This is against arguably honestly, this is the best defense in the NFL. If you're running for 208 yards and Aaron Jones has 143 yards, I know A.J. Dillon can do better than what he did, and although he didn't have a bad game, like they're going to go up against significantly worse run defenses. They can do the same, if not better, and win games because of it. And guess what? That puts less pressure on Rodgers to chuck the ball deep to these rookie receivers. So I think you take so many positives out of this for Green Bay. And also it shows they can still compete with teams. In the second half, yes, I know they lost the game by 10, but this looked like, let's be honest, Frank, going into halftime, we thought this game was a wrap. It's going to be like a 3-score blowout, right? They made it interesting. They didn't win the game because they're not better than Buffalo, but they made it interesting. And I think that you don't count them out for not making the playoffs this year. I still think if they can change their offense to being run-oriented, and I think a big part of that is Bakhtiari's back in the offensive line. You have that stability offensive line. You run. Let Rodgers make throws when he has to. And at that point, defenses aren't going to be scheming for those rookies, and those rookies are going to get open.
You know what? I said this earlier. It's a little joke I have about Aaron Rodgers. Do you know what Aaron Rodgers does when it's off-season time and they put the cameras on him and he's throwing into the trash cans for Instagram? throwing into a trash can get you so far. Because at this point, you're throwing to rookies. I don't want to compare these two teams. Be a Chicago Bear. Run the ball. Run until you get the chance to throw.
Right.
Stop trying to put yourself in situations where you need to pass. You're down. Okay. You're down, what is that? 24-7 at half.
Yeah.
You're getting beat. If you control the clock and you run the ball well, and then when they played the Giants, I saw a lot of RPO where it was handoff or screen, handoff or slant. Keep that kind of fast-paced tempo offense up, but at the same time, make them respect your run game. When you get in the situation where you have to start throwing, teams like the Bills, they're fine with that. The Bills were messing up on their own side, like you said. They kept passing. The Bills could have just kept running it and eat the clock up.
Yeah.
So I think for Green Bay, I guess this is a good learning kind of curve for them. You needed a game like this. But I feel
also, you know what? I still think the biggest hole, and because I think the offense will improve now. I think you're going to see a run-heavy focus, and I think Rodgers is going to be more productive as a result. But their defense is bad. Their defense is just not good. And
I've never been a fan of their defense. Even when their defense was good, I've still never been a fan of their defense.
And I don't know if it's just because the secondary is not bad. Jair Alexander isn't bad. He had a good game, but it's just they're not great at stopping the run. They're not great at getting to the quarterback. They have no pass.
Yeah. I really don't know what it is with Green Bay. Because like I said, I've seen them run the ball great before, and they just kind of pull away from it.
Yeah.
Like in the Giants game, I'm going to keep going back to that. They controlled the game. And then Rodgers, first they don't pick up the run on first down. They play action second down, throws it away on third. We get the ball back, we score. It happened 3 times in a row. I don't know what's going on, if it's coaching, if it's Rodgers, if it's whatever. But if they establish the run game early on and just keep at it, your touchdowns, your numbers, all that will come. Your wins will
skyrocket.
Your wins will come with that. You're playing from behind every game because you're just trying to be good old Aaron Rodgers. You don't have Devontae anymore.
Not that.
You're not. I don't want to say you're not that, because I know he's still accurate, but I don't know.
He doesn't have the weapons that can assist him to be that good. So and think about playoffs, right? Maybe I'm jumping the gun here because it's a 3-5 football team, but if they start establishing the run, say it's a playoff setting like that, like what happened with Tampa Bay a couple of years back. Aaron Rodgers, threw 3 picks in the second half or something in that NFC Championship game because all he wanted to do was chuck the ball deep. What happens to Aaron Rodgers' efficiency when you start running the ball like that? It's going to be much easier for him to find guys open and to make those plays, especially in clutch situations, which has been the issue with Aaron Rodgers. So it not only will lead to success in the regular season, but that's what wins you games in the postseason. People don't seem to realize that.
Last year, they lost to the San Francisco 49ers, who didn't score an offensive touchdown.
Yeah, you're right.
You can't lose. If you're Aaron Rodgers, now I'm about to really get into it with Aaron Rodgers. I have Patrick Mahomes higher than him all time right now. And people will argue that, and that's okay. Aaron Rodgers is great. I know he is. But to be at the top, you have to keep winning. You don't win. You lose to teams who don't score offensive touchdowns. You fail to get it done every postseason.
Right.
And I know this is just supposed to be for this game, but it's kind of catching up to him for regular season games now. You can't get it done in the regular season. You're never going to see a postseason.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, because there was the issue. Wasn't there issues where Rodgers used to audible out of the plays from?
Yeah, that was early on with LaFleur because he just didn't trust.
That was LaFleur. So my thing is, I think we know how Rodgers is as a person. He's kind of an ass. I think Rodgers needs to take a step back because his legacy might get ruined if he keeps playing.
He needs to just trust LaFleur to call run play. That's it. You're going to win games.
If we are breaking down these such simple X's and O's of football, Rodgers, we know how great you are. Everybody knows it. Your legacy is going to be tarnished. Run the ball. Just work off that. Don't try.
And that's going to lead to a longer career.
That's going to lead to look how Brady's still playing because he just relied on quick passes and running the ball.
And running the ball. Well, this year, now look what's happening. Now that he's having to throw the football a lot more, it's not working. But he had Leonard Fournette. He had countless running backs in New England that were helping him out. So, like, it matters.
It really helps, too. Like, I know he had Belichick, but, like, if you're going to compare their careers, Rodgers has always had the weapons around him.
Sure.
The better weapon. I mean, you can argue Brady had Moss, and look what he did with Moss. Brady had Gronk. Look what he did with Gronk. But you also gave him a bunch of random guys in the Super Bowl because Gronk has an ACL injury and Edelman's out for the year and this and that, and he still gets it done. Rodgers can't get it done in the regular season or the playoffs with really good players. So there comes a point where I really question Aaron Rodgers, his legacy and all that. And Buffalo, like I said, I wanted to focus a lot on Green Bay because we know how good Buffalo is. They kind of messed themselves up in that second half. But Aaron Rodgers, he's got to figure it out. So with that being said, to wrap this one up, you still have Buffalo as 1 or 2?
I mean, you have to have Buffalo at 1 because I just think they are the most talented team in the league. And I think at their peak, they can beat anybody. I mean, they just beat Kansas City a couple weeks ago. But I'm just saying they got to stop being complacent. Like, what wins you games?
They get aggressive too much.
You see, my problem is they don't get aggressive enough where it matters. What I'm trying to say is, like, for instance, this game, they started off really, really hot. They worked the run game. They put up a ton of points. It looked like it was going to be, like I said, a 3-4 score game. But when you have your opponent down and out, fucking slice their throat, fucking step on their throat. Like, I know it's very graphic, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, end it. Like, just don't give them a chance to come back.
Yep.
Because that's what I mean, again, Green Bay isn't a better football team than you, and Green Bay is trying to figure out their identity, which I think they might have figured out now. They should be a run-heavy team. But if you go against a team that is better than Green Bay, that is more dynamic than Green Bay on both sides of the football, and you're in a position where you were in the first half and you don't just put them out, they're going to come back and beat you. And that's what might happen to you in the playoffs. So if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to make sure that when you have to capitalize on your opportunities. When you have a team down and out, keep scoring points. Don't lose what's been working for you. Don't now throw the ball because you want to. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like, that's just really stupid.
It might come back to bite them in the postseason, but who knows? We'll go on.
Who knows, man? At the moment, they're still the best team in the league. So
this game, I'm going to break down what I feel is the X's and O's of basic football for Zach Taylor. I get it. You have star players. Jamar Chase was out. We know that. But all last year, all this year, the Bengals struggle or they throw streak splash plays. I failed to see a time where I've seen a Bengals offense that's creativity. Kansas City does a lot of motion, running back runs around, receiver runs behind him, this, that, crossing routes, every flips. They're creative with it. They get everybody involved. The Bengals, Zach Taylor just draws streak routes and tells Joe Burrow to go throw it up. 32-13 to the Browns. We're going to go back on your point, which you said about Aaron Rodgers. Look how Brissett played.
Yeah.
Because they just ran the ball, one play action, 30-yard crossing route.
Right.
Amari Cooper looked like he was his prime all game. Amari Cooper had 131 yards. The Browns didn't. I don't think the Browns had Denzel Ward in this game. So you're telling me T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd can't get open? Joe Mixon doesn't 27 yards on 8 carries? I love Joe Burrow. I love Jamar Chase, LSU guy. But I've known since the beginning their connection was streak routes. Yeah. You saw it last year.
No, and strictly streak routes.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna pull a little thing up. You can talk really quick.
No, I was just gonna say real quick. I mean, they're just a very one-dimensional team. And yes, you can say they don't have the protection to merit a run game. Joe Mixon's been underperforming this year, but you can't be just relying on chucking the ball deep to your guys to win you games. That's just not a sustainable recipe in the long run. It's not. It works when your team's really working well, and you're the hottest team in football. But reality is starting to settle with the Bengals. The Bengals are just not a very good football team, and they need to be more dynamic on offense.
I'm trying to find this picture for you so I can show the where is it? It's a picture of Jamar Chase's route tree, and it was compared to Justin Jefferson's, and it's ugly. Like,
Yeah, no, I remember that picture, and I think to that point, as you're trying to pull it up, I think it's indicative, and this is going to sound really weird because I'm going to preface this by saying Kirk Cousins is not a better quarterback than Joe Burrow, but Kirk Cousins is a much more experienced quarterback than Joe Burrow in the NFL, and Kirk Cousins has more knowledge as to where to find his receivers or to how to make his receivers make plays on their own. You know what I mean? Where to throw the ball. Yes, Joe Burrow obviously has that connection with Jamar Chase. There's no question about it. Those two have played with each other for years. But in the NFL, it's, these are some of the smartest coaches in the world. They're going to find ways to scheme against you if you're so one-dimensional. I'm not saying, don't throw the ball to Chase as much. It's more like give Chase the opportunities to make plays on his own. Don't force feed him the ball when he's in double coverage down the field. That's not a sustainable recipe. And again, I think a lot of it also has to come down to the fact that Joe Burrow very rarely has a clean pocket.
Oh, their O-line is depressing.
Horrendous. Worst O-line in the entire league. So
here we go. Okay. So this was from a few weeks ago. I'm going to show these two for the screen. Okay. Because you need to see how bad this is. Share screen. Okay. So you see it, right?
Yeah.
That's Justin Jefferson's. What is Justin Jefferson doing? He's crossing the field. He's running drags. He's going upfield. He's making corner. He's running routes.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
What, like, seriously, as a person, like I said, I love Jamar. But him and Burrow's connection in college was a lot of deep throws, a lot of streaks. I understand he's good at that. He can do more than that, Zach Taylor. Let me see if there's any more. Like, oh yeah, look at all these routes. Look at this. Look where all these guys are running. They're going all over the field. And then that. I'm retweeting that. It's terrible, man. So, as a football fan, Zach Taylor, figure it out. You have one of the most talented skill position offenses in football, and you fucking amaze me every week to fuck it up.
He's not a good. Listen, he's never been a good coach. He like. The best thing that could have ever happened to him was the fact they made the Super Bowl, because the guy's not going to lose his job anytime soon. Mm-hmm. But he's one of the worst coaches in the entire league. And we've been saying this for how many years, Frank?
Here's what's crazy. Look at the stats are pulled up, right? You can see the stats.
Yeah.
Cleveland receiving. Look at these. There's like 6 people. Look at the Cincinnati. Look how many people went to go catch a pass. And it's like, I don't know if I'm more surprised the Browns scored 32 pretty much just with the run offense and play actions, and because Brissett played good, or if I'm more surprised that the Bengals are really that one. Here's the thing: it's 2 one-dimensional teams playing each other, and the one that ran the ball won the game.
Yeah,
the one that just throws streaks. Is it a surprise to you that the team that can only throw streaks, look at their Super Bowl touchdowns? How did those happen? A Jamar Chase streak that got him to like the 5-yard line, a T. Higgins streak that he ripped Jalen Ramsey's face mask and scored.
Right.
Where's the real offense? Like, Burrow has no protection. Don't run the ball. Joe Mixon's a low elite end running back. Your wide receivers, they're not bad. T. Higgins is really good.
They have elite receivers.
T. Higgins is a 1 on the Giants. Tyler Boyd is a 1 on the Giants. I always go back to the Giants because that's the team that doesn't have a receiver.
Let's just say, for sake of argument, Green Bay. Those guys are the best receivers on Green Bay by a mile.
I bet you Aaron Rodgers would love T. Higgins.
Or even Tyler Boyd.
Hayden Hurst isn't bad. He's really bounced back in his career. Joe Mixon, low end elite running back. You don't run the ball with him enough. You give him 8 carries, 27 yards. You shy away from it.
Yeah.
I understand maybe because these are just the stats, and I watched the game, but I don't remember every carry. Did you just stop running the ball because you were losing it? You were losing by 40?
That's what it is. And also, every single time they tried running the ball early on, Cleveland the thing is their pass rush dominated.
Oh, yeah. Taki and Myles Garrett. Play where Taki got the strip sack. Myles Garrett was going to get it if he wasn't there. They were over him. So,
but that goes back to the obvious. The offensive line sucks.
Yes. And I think Cleveland, they're 3-5, which is weird because I think they're a bad team. But then you watch them do this, and you're like,
who do they play next week? No, they play the Finns. They have a bye week this week. Then they play the Finns.
Okay.
And then after that, I think Deshaun might be back soon.
No, yeah, he's back week 11 or week 12.
Wow.
So think about it. If they can pull out 2 wins, which I don't, that's one thing is Michael said it early on, they needed to win games to make the playoffs before Deshaun gets there, which is obvious. They need to win now. You have to. We said this on the predictions last week. I said you have to win now.
They have to listen. They can't lose more than 7 games. They can only lose 2 more games in the next 4.
Yeah.
If they want a realistic shot, and that's assuming Deshaun Watson comes back and he's not rusty.
Yes. I don't think they're winning division. I don't think
they're going to make the playoffs this year, but they could definitely make a push depending on how well they do these next couple weeks.
So, to wrap this one up, I went on my rant about the Bengals. You went on your rant. I showed the wonderful route running tree that they have set up for them. Where do you think the Bengals rank realistically now? I think
I saw the dumbest thing in the world today. I saw Colin Cowherd still had him as a top 10 team in the NFL. I thought that was the most ridiculous, stupid take I think I've ever seen in my life.
When I did my power rankings, I kind of feel bad because I did put them above you guys for beating you, and I didn't really count in the
I told you it's stupid, Frank.
The injuries. I know. But they might be really low now.
They're not good.
You're a 4-4 team, and a 4-4 team in today's NFL is good for some reason.
No, because their division is very contested. But now, think about it. The Ravens already beat them once. Ravens now got Roquan Smith. You and I both agree the Ravens are a top 5 team, and we agreed on that before they got Roquan Smith.
Yep.
Imagine this Cincinnati. Dude, they just activated Tyus Bowser. Their pass rush just went from decent to elite. They just got Tyus Bowser, who's a natural 3-4 linebacker, and they just got Roquan Smith. And you're telling me that Joe Burrow's going to survive that game? No. So Cincinnati's best bet is the wild card, but because the NFL is so unpredictable this year, they definitely still have a shot. So you can't put them too low. But to me, they're not a top 15 team in the NFL right now.
It's crazy because the Browns scored 32.
And wait, can I say one more thing? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Just before I forget, they're 0-3 against their division right now. Just putting that out there.
What did I say about the Niners? That's the biggest thing is you have to beat your division.
You got to beat your division.
And the Browns, it's when I see the score, I just think, oh, they ran all over them, which they did. They also threw all over them.
Because they tried scheming for the run, and then that gave Jacoby Brissett the opportunity to just chuck it deep to Amari Cooper. Had a hell of a game.
He had a great game.
And Donovan Peoples-Jones also looked really good, but that's because the run game was so effective.
Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, Cincinnati! It's like when you can. If Cincinnati, I'm going to go on a little rant for 5 minutes again. If Cincinnati, here's the thing: Tom Brady, he towards the end of his career, well, he's still playing, but towards the back end of his career. You started to notice it when he beat Kansas City in Kansas City in the AFC Championship. They ran the ball.
He was with the Pats, or
when he was with the Pats, they ran the ball a lot, and they passed when they had to on third downs. They ran the ball a lot when he was with the Bucs his first year. They seem to run the ball a lot because they can't pass. But throughout his career, he's always been a passer. He's always thrown He's always made you cover the short route so you can throw it over the top. Here's a thing, Zach Taylor. maybe if you implemented a realistic playbook, a realistic route. You're not playing Madden, bro. You need to have under routes. You need to have crossing routes. You need to have one of the most. Do you know how you remember when Justin Jefferson mixed up Jair Alexander the one time he covered him?
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson ran into the slot, in out, cooked him. Why? Because there was 3 other people next to him all running around.
Sure.
You got to create chaos over the middle to get somebody open. Yeah. You can't just rely on throwing. You can't like. I'm looking at the numbers. T. Higgins long catch, 41 yards. He had 49 on the game. Are you serious? You have to create like if you watched Amari Cooper's routes yesterday, they were all like sideline breaking routes. They were all creating separation, like with route running.
Right.
You're just throwing up the ball and hoping it works. And I'm not saying Joe Burrow's dumb. Like I know Joe Burrow's a good quarterback. But that's what you're putting in the playbook for your quarterback to do is, hey, man, look deep. No, hey, man, let's run an offense. That's why you're 4-4. I guarantee you if they had a different coach, if they had a Dable, they would be so much better.
If they had, Zach Taylor is not a good football coach.
If they had a coach who could, like we were talking about Green Bay, LaFleur. How do you say his name?
LaFleur. Yeah.
Yes, I know I bashed Rodgers a lot, but like I said, from him running the RPO, just running the RPO opened up a wide receiver screen into a slant.
Yeah.
Just doing that. Created 3 plays.
You can't run an RPO, Frank, when you have a running back that isn't an effective runner of the football, nor do you have the protection to allow you to run an RPO. That's why Philly's so good at the RPO, because they have the best run committee in the league. So people will actually buy it, and their protection is good enough so that if they decide to throw the ball last minute in an RPO, they can pass protect. Cincinnati can't do that.
I know it's just one play out of the bunch of plays.
But RPO is such a dynamic, but it requires so much for it to be successful.
It's very dynamic, but like, okay, so think about it like this. Do you remember the one play where they kind of beat Micah Parsons? I think it was for a touchdown. Philly, I think, ran an RPO and a wide receiver motion across
I know what
the
you're
screen.
talking about.
He motions across the screen. Leave Parsons to pick up Hurts so he can dump that down.
Yeah,
or if Parsons goes and gets him, Hurts can run. That's creative play design.
Right.
That's why I know
you're isolating their best pass rusher. And then
I know it's kind of this is a different coach too. I know it's kind of laid back a little bit because he had Cooper Rush, but Kellen Moore, he creates creative plays. He'll make sure the run game's established, and then he'll make you pick. He'll do this and that. He'll mess. Then he'll take you over the top. The Bengals just want to go over the top. You can't just do that.
The Bengals are not a well-coached team.
So
they're just not. Listen, they have all the makings to be a perennial contender in the league. They just need to, again, beef up the offensive line. That's the most important part, but they need a new coach because that coach isn't going to cut it.
I wonder how many good coaches in the NFL around like bad teams would just love to coach the Bengals for a game and just
let me tell you something. I know this is probably like a weird example because, to be fair, I mean, the Jags have a bad record, but think of like a Doug Peterson type with this team. Like one of these just like pure offensive guys. Like I don't want to say Sean McVay because that's never going to happen.
I was going to say Sean McVay, but that's just like
that's never going to happen. It's like a pipe dream. But like you get what I'm trying to say. Like one of these like creative offensive, like for lack of argument.
Well, that's the thing. People think Kellen Moore might go get a head coaching job. People might think Eric Bieniemy might go get a head coaching job. They're offensive guys. Put them on a team where think about Kansas City's offensive style run with Cincinnati's team.
Yeah.
You got the motions, you got the flips, the RPO flip to the tight end. You're running a creative ass offense with, I'm not saying they're nobodies, but with Juju Smith and MVS, and your quarterback is throwing 5 touchdown games. Meanwhile, Joe Burrow's fighting for his life because his O-line sucks. They just throw streaks. Like, I don't get what they're doing in Cincinnati. We've ranted about this team for so long because, oh my God, we know this. Their team is good enough to win. They just have a terrible coaching staff.
I mean, they're literally a coach away, man. They're just not very well coached.
I think last year, their Super Bowl run was the perfect execution of their streak plays and splash plays working out with the run game being successful. And then this year, run game's not really there. The pass game, I didn't see the Bengals offense really open up till that Saints game 2 weeks ago, where Jamar just went crazy. And then the next game, Burrow has a crazy game.
Yeah.
And then now you're here where back to square one.
There's not enough consistency all around the field, but a lot of that comes back to bad scheming and just because it's like it's not a lack of personnel. It's like yes, with the exception of the offensive line, but like, I mean, you just need a new coach, man. Like again, they're never.
You've said it so many times. Hopefully, the Bengals see this and get a new coach. Come on, bro.
It's never gonna happen.
Just stop sharing the screen. Head on back over. All right, Max. That was a fun 1 hour session.
It was fun.
Our first X's and O's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and peace.